Just want to check in. Can you hear me, Kelly
Yes.
Lynn? Okay, great. All right. Well, we'll wait a few more minutes till we're able to get a few people in. I see there's 2 people who are joining us this Friday. Welcome, welcome. Excited to have you, and excited to get started with this conversation on executive presence. I think it's such an important conversation to have. I see a few more people are joining us in the audience. We're excited to have you. And I always love to start off my audio sessions by just reminding everyone that we want to hear from you. We'd love to hear your perspective. So please feel free to join us on stage at any point in time. So this week's topic is demystifying executive presence. As always, thank you so much for joining us. You can be anywhere this Friday, but you're joining us here, and we really appreciate it. We're really grateful. And so I'd love to give my guest, Kelly Lynn, the opportunity to quickly introduce herself before we get started with the questions. Kelly Lynn?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Hello, everyone. I see everyone, whether you're joining live or listening to the replay. I am Kelly Lynn Adams. I am an executive leadership, life, and business coach. I am trauma informed. I started on Wall Street and then climbed the corporate ladder for 18 years, working for some incredible companies doing finance, strategy, and HR. And then I started coaching and speaking in 2009. So I love talking about executive presence. This is what I help a lot of my clients with and for, and excited to be here and start the conversation.
Thank you so much for that. Really excited to dive into the conversation. And once again, just want to remind everyone here, if you have a question for Kelly Lynn, if you have something you want to contribute, please feel free to raise your hand and join us on stage. But to just get us started, Kelly Lynn, can you tell us what is executive presence? I feel like I've worked with a lot of clients that have these ideas about what executive presence is and isn't. But yeah, from your perspective, what is it? And maybe what isn't it as well?
Yes, I love this question. And if you Google it, I'm going to read the definition that I found. And I think it means something different for everyone. But the definition I found was executive presence is about your ability to inspire confidence. So inspiring confidence in your subordinates that you're leading, or the people that are the stakeholders, right? Managing above, managing below, managing across. And most importantly, it is among the people that you work with. So it can be defined in any type of way. And I know there's like 7, I like to say there's 7 C's of executive presence.
Okay.
And I love this because it's your composure, right? It's the connection, it's the charisma, it's your confidence, like I said, it's the credibility, clarity, and consciousness. So I feel like everyone has a different definition of executive presence, but it's like, how do we actually embody that and then take it into our lives and our leadership?
Oh, I love that. I love this idea also of the 7 C's. From your experience, where do you feel most leaders get it wrong, or maybe don't spend as much time on in relation to those 7 C's of executive presence?
Yeah, so I will say I will pull from a lot of the folks that I coach in the executive space and even in the entrepreneurial space, to be honest. A lot of it comes to, and this is what I'm seeing more and more, is communication.
Okay.
Are they actually effectively communicating? Some of my clients are like, oh no, I know they know this, or they should know this. And it's like, well, did you ask? Did you make it known? It's like the simplest things that we may think that someone else may know, they might not know. So that's where like the clarity comes in and really being conscious of the situation. And also the judgment, right? Like, oh, if I speak up, how am I going to be perceived? Is there anything as a stupid question, or if I don't know something, and this is where like the imposter syndrome comes up a lot. Also, I see in my clients is, can you speak up? What if you do say something wrong? What if you do speak out of turn, right? So it's really giving ourselves permission to like be fully embodied. And we don't talk about embodiment in the quote unquote corporate sector. It's a lot of times talked about in the entrepreneurial industries, but that Yeah, it's the fear of like, how am I going to be seen? How am I going to be judged? How am I going to sound? So that's what I'm seeing in my clients a lot, is the communication and the the permission to speak up when you want to or when you need to.
Oh, I love that. And I love the fact that you have the perspective from both the entrepreneurial world and also the corporate world. So you mentioned something, and for those of you listening, some of you may have heard this term before, or maybe you haven't, but can you tell us a little bit about embodiment? What is embodiment, and why is it important for leaders to keep this term embodiment in mind, especially as it relates to executive presence?
Yeah, so I like to think of embodiment as, does the does your shoes match the outfit?
Oh, I love that
Or
metaphor. Okay.
yeah, or does the audio match the video? Right? So it's like, okay, how are you showing up in the room? Are you showing up, and are you letting your voice fill the room? Are you owning the room? How is your body language? A lot of people are talking, and sometimes, I don't know if you've seen in meetings, people cross their arms or they're not open, right? They're like, oh, you're crossing your arms. So when we say about embodiment, it's reading the room, all like in what people are saying, what they're not saying, how they're actually sitting, what their composure is. So it's a full on, like, are you present, right? And it's really like taking a stand for yourself and being able, right, to communicate and fill the room in a sense. So embodiment is so important because we can say something, and are we actually living it, like, to the best of our ability, right? I don't believe in perfectionism and all of that, but it's like, are we doing the best with what we have, know who we are being in the situation? And that's what I like. And that's why I like to think of embodiment is being like mind, body, soul, all in.
Okay, yeah, I love that. One of the things that I always talk about is the importance of like recognizing that people aren't just sort of listening to what you say, but also watching what you do. And I think that relates very nicely to what you were just sharing about sort of like being the message, really recognizing that people are, they're watching you, right? And are your words matching what you're sharing? And even potentially, do you believe what you're sharing? I also think that, our teams, people we work with, can sometimes very easily see through you. If you don't believe what you're saying, it's not authentic, it's not genuine.
Yes, and I was coaching actually someone yesterday, and I love that you brought up, like, people can actually see right through or feel something, right? When you get a gut instinct, right? And people a lot of times listen to their gut, and sometimes they don't. And a lot of people also too, like my client yesterday, she had a really hard time with being vulnerable. She said, I don't like being vulnerable with my team, especially my direct reports. And because she thought it was a sign of weakness. And I asked her, when you see vulnerability in your manager or a stakeholder or CEO or CFO, what do you think? Right? And she's like, no, I actually I can see the mess. Like I can relate with them. There's a different sense. So vulnerability, some may think it's a weakness. However, it's actually a strength. So it's letting our masks and our guards down, and obviously a comfortable but uncomfortable way. I mean, a vulnerability is something that I say people can step into. There's different layers to it, but it's okay to be vulnerable, to say, hey, I don't know this, because not everything is our zone of genius, and everyone has strengths and everyone has weaknesses. So that's what I like to tell people too. And I was telling my client yesterday, it's like, even if you're so scared, even when you're in a boardroom or in a meeting where there's so many people with different credentials and maybe they're more quote unquote successful than you, guess what? They all have their weaknesses and they all have their strengths. So if we can look at it like that and realize that, it makes the playing field a little bit more leveled in a sense.
Yes, I love that. And I love that you were able to work with your client to help them sort of rethink the story they were telling themselves about vulnerability. And I think that's a great question to ask those of you who are listening. Just with the quick reaction, I'm just really curious, what is your relationship with vulnerability? Is that something that you're comfortable with? Let me know with the reaction. Let me know with the heart, if that resonates. Vulnerability is something that you're comfortable with. Let me know with the quick reaction. I'd be curious to know. All right, we got one heart. Yes. Okay. Okay. Well, then, maybe a follow-up question for that. All right, Linda, thank you so much. Also comfortable with some vulnerability. I feel like, the follow-up question to that would be, how do you know when to be vulnerable? Especially if you're working on executive or leadership presence. Do you have any tips for those who are listening to make sure they're able to have that, I guess, that balance between, coming across as someone who is competent, has business acumen, but also is able to empathize and connect with others?
Yes. So there's so many different ways you can do this. And the thing is, it's leaning on your strengths and then owning your weaknesses. So there's so many different ways you can do this. I mean, some people are very vulnerable in giving, say, feedback to another person, right? So I don't know, a lot of people have heard of like the sandwich approach to feedback, right? Where you start with a positive strength about the person and then sandwich in the middle, right? You could say, this is what, maybe this needs a little bit more working on. This is, X, Y, and Z, like giving them the feedback and then ending with a positive, their strengths and all of that. So that's kind of one approach, but also even there's a lot of executives that may be starting like new projects or new roles and this can pertain also to entrepreneurs as well. And it's saying, hey, I know I'm a little confused about what we're doing here. However, this is my feedback and you can bring in kind of your past. This is what we have done at X, Y, and Z company, or this is the way that I saw it when there was a similar situation related to this. So you're showing your vulnerability and you're also bringing in your strengths as well to the situation. Or sometimes it's just saying like, I don't know this.
Yeah.
Right, like just being honest. And people really respect that, right? Depending on the situation, depending on the environment. I mean, this is all dependent, right? Because everyone has different personalities, everyone has different environments that they're working in and navigating through. So it's really just being also practicing. You're also back to the embodiment. I'll share a story. I was working, I don't know if anyone here, I would love to see the reaction. If anyone here has worked with horses, whether you have ridden a horse or take care of horses, or maybe have been on a farm. But I actually went to a mastermind where we got the opportunity to move the horse with our presence, and our mind.
Okay.
And the first time I went onto the field, right, to pick the horse that I wanted to move, literally with my presence, because horses aren't like dogs or any other animals. Horses actually listen to your energy, to your presence. So you can't wave them, you can't call them with your voice.
Okay.
It's actually like how you're standing, right? So I went onto the field in this particular situation and the trainer's like, okay, where do you want the horse to go? And the horse's back, the bottom was facing to me. The horse's face was not even facing me. I'm like, how am I going to move this horse when it's not even looking at me? So it didn't move. And I was like standing but I was really not confident. I was kind of like, is this horse going to move? And this is what I was thinking, right? So my thoughts and my body were like, oh, how can I move this horse? And so she's like, okay, get off the field. And she's like, I want you to come back on knowing that you are going to move this horse and demanding in your presence that the horse will move. So I went off and I'm like, okay. I was like,
Okay.
collect yourself, Kelly, and like really like find evidence of where in your life that you have moved something and made it happen, right? And really embody that. So I went back on and I was like, I just stood there and I looked at the horse and I literally like with my whole body and everything I had, I just stared at the horse and with my presence, I was like, I am here and you're gonna move. And the horse literally turned around and then I just like pointed my arm, my right arm, and I pointed it where I wanted the horse to go. And my presence was very solid, very authoritative, very like no wobble. So, and the horse moved, right? So that also you could even also practice this on children, right? When children know when you don't have boundaries, they can sense it, right? When your no really means a yes or you're wobbly, it's like they can sense it. So that's how I can explain kind of like, how are you being authoritative, right? Or you know what you know, like that sense. And listen, sometimes we aren't 100% confident. And it's like, how can you just be even 1% more confident? Because it will show in the embodiment of the executive presence.
Oh, I love that story. I think that's such a great story. And I think there's lots of elements here that all of us can take from that story. I love this idea of sort of borrowing. So thinking back to a time where you felt that confidence, right? Or you felt like you had the ability to do something similar and sort of bringing that into the current situation.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, is finding evidence, right? If you can find evidence, and everyone here listening can find evidence of where you had a win, what your strength is, what situation, personal or professional, that you have gone through and made it up to this point, because you're listening right now, there is at least one, if not 100 examples of evidence that you've gotten up to this point and there's something that you've overcome or you was very confident in a situation, and you can lean on that, because what the brain does, it deletes and distorts. So we want to remind ourselves, our brains, our bodies, of the situations that we have been through and have navigated with confidence and with presence. So whether that's for entrepreneurs, it could be reading testimonials, it could be collecting, evidence of people that they've helped, even in professional settings, right? It's like, who did you manage? It could be the projects that you have, accomplished, or the wins that you've gotten. It could be 101 things. It's like, but we really actively get to seek out the evidence of our wins. Basically, you go back to 5 years old if you want to, but it's collecting that evidence is so important.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And that's definitely something that I also share with my clients. Yes, I see Samira in the audience is like heart emoji. And I think that's so incredibly important for all of us, because I'm sure all of us in here, high achievers, getting lots of things done, doing, delivering, doing the most. And so taking the time to reflect on your wins, or even creating potentially a routine around it, really will help you, move forward, right? And remind you of the awesome things that you've done.
Absolutely. And also, another story, I was actually talking to my coach, and she was coaching a gentleman that was an entrepreneur, and I think he had like a $20 million sales business, something. And she asked him, how are you so successful? Like, what do you attribute this success to? Because in sales, right? Sales can be very up and down. It could be very, sometimes we don't know. And that's what he said. He said, I listen and read my testimonials every single morning. He says, I make that a daily habit into his ritual. So he reminds himself, right? And reminds his brain, pretty much he's, brainwashing himself into, right? Reminding himself of all these people that he's helped, all of these people and companies that he's made an impact on. So I think that's so, so important, because it is critical that we remind ourselves who we are, what we are capable, because life is lifing.
Yes. I love that phrase. Life is life.
Right.
Yes.
And we could get caught up. There's a lot of noise out there on social media, in the news, we are constantly getting bombarded. And it's like, okay, nope, I'm going to get grounded. I'm going to come back to me and my North Star, and I'm going to fill my environments and my brain and my body. It's kind of like consumption on all levels, what we watch, what we listen to, what environments we put ourselves in, what people we surround ourselves. And I'm going to literally put yourself in a bubble if you need to really remind yourself who you are, because we are impressionable, right? And we become the environments and the people and all the things that we consume. So I think it's super important that we get to do that, right? And it's a choice, right? It's kind of like brushing your teeth, taking a shower. It's a daily choice.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it. So it's sort of like you're kind of creating, I don't know if this doesn't resonate for some of you, but the way I think of it is like the right propaganda, right? Like I am subliminal messaging, creating, propaganda to remind myself of my why, right? So that North Star, that why piece, and then also the value that I add. And I love it. I absolutely love that, Kelly Lynn.
Yeah, it's so important. It's so important that we also protect our peace.
Yes.
Protect our peace and our boundaries, right? Because we see, right, there's a lot of things going on in the world, and then mental health also. I mean, I'm a mental health advocate. It's like we get to take care of ourselves, right? And ask for support. And that's also executive presence, right? Everything touches everything.
Yeah.
Everything can affect everything. So yes, you might not be high vibe and positive all the time. And in the times that you do need support, and this is where I also see executives, right? They're burning out, they're doing so much. And it's like, oh, who can even think about executive presence when I'm stressed?
Yes.
When I'm working all the time and I'm burning out. Well, guess what? Like burnout also it's physical, it's emotional, and it's mental. It's just like, how are we taking care of ourselves on all planes? And it really starts, sometimes we get to just disconnect, right? And be with ourselves or our families or things that are going to really fill our own cups.
I love all of that. And I'm just taking a look at time and I wanted to ask the audience, does anyone have any questions for Kelly Lynn? Has anything come up for anyone listening to our conversation so far? Feel free to raise your hand. We'd love to bring you onto the stage.
Yeah, or even if anyone else has really great tips around executive presence, because it's also like knowing when to move the conversation forward, right? And practice strategically thinking and, mastering your body language and learning also how to be persuasive, right? Like, okay, well, how are you persuasive? Do you let the other person talk? One of my coaches said, everyone has not entered the room unless everyone has spoken, which I thought was so interesting.
Wow.
It's like, oh, wow, right? Because this is what I do know is that all human beings, and I can make this blanket statement for all human beings, and I usually don't ever do that, but all human beings want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to be understood.
Yes.
So at the core end of it, and the bottom line is like, we all want to be loved pretty much. So, and even if you're managing people or trying to persuade or influence, it's like, how are you making the other person or the group or people feel like seen, heard, understood, like calling out people's name. Like I see Linda in the audience, right? And I see Jonas. And so people get that like, right? It's like, they see me. And it's a good feeling, right?
Agreed. All right. Once again, just want to invite everyone in the audience. If you do have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. This is going to be a bit of a shorter session. We'll be done at the hour. So this is your chance to ask the incredible Kelly Lynn her perspective. Yes. All right. Allowed to speak. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you so much for joining. It's nice to see you again.
All right, nice to see you. Kelly Lynn, I really appreciate a lot of what you said and even the title itself, Demystifying Executive Presence. And I just remember when I was 25 years old, back in my home country of Chad, my manager over the training center, when she hired me, she brought me, and as you were talking, reminded me of this, she brought me to the managers meeting every Monday, and all the managers of different departments. And she went with me twice and never went back with me because she has a lot of confidence. But I think one of the things she was trying to get into my head is like, yeah, you're new into the oil and gas industry and you're sitting around with these people who have 10 plus years, but you belong here. I want you to understand that they're just human beings like you. They just been in the industry a lot longer, right? And you will get there over time. So in her mind, she wasn't gonna like go to every meeting with me or wait for a long time. She wanted to just basically throw me in the water and say you need to
Yes.
see humanity as well, because they can be wrong about things. And so sometimes I think when I've been in meetings where executives just suck the energy out of the room without acknowledging that there are people in there. And you talked a lot about vulnerability, and I like that a lot. It's not weakness. It's just creating an atmosphere where people can feel the sense that they can ask questions. And so even inviting people into spaces with you guys experts like this, because I invite a lot of people in the rural communities of Africa to join, to in essence demystify, in the sense that you can sit and listen to these hard conversations with a lot of experts and still learn something. So it was just more of a comment than a question.
I love that. And yes, right? It's like a lot of people get stuck in their patterns too, right? So it's like, hi, no, I'm bringing a fresh perspective. And this is what I like to tell people is you might be on chapter 2 and someone else might be on their chapter 8, right? So we never want to compare ourselves. And everyone has a perspective. Every single person has this perspective. It's not like, okay, you're not part of the C-suite or you're brand new at the company. Guess what? The brand new person at the company might have something that will innovate and change something. So I love that. And I love that she literally threw you in to the wolves. And that's what I like to call experiential coaching, right? It's experiential and embodiment, coaching, because it's like there's no way, like that's the best way of learning, right? Throwing you into a situation and then seeing, learning from that. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really appreciate it. And I do want to just check in with time. Kelly, Lynn, can you just share maybe a little bit more about where people can, connect with you, find out more about what you do, or if you have any additional questions, how they can reach out?
Sure. Yeah, you can head on over to my website at kellylynadams.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter. That's really how I communicate with my community. I have all different things going on. You'll see I have a podcast. I have different programs and things that I host as well. And then, connect with me here on LinkedIn. So I'm honored to be a part of this, Makua, and just the conversation, and everyone that is here live. Thank you so much. And for those that are listening to the replay, thank you, and look forward to hearing from many of you.
All right. Thank you again, Kelly Lynn, for joining us. Those of you in the audience, if you could just show her some love, just share a quick reaction to how you felt about this conversation. I see a heart. Thank you so much, Linda. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of you for joining us this Friday, and especially since it's a holiday, which I forgot. I'm not going to lie. But thank you again for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Kelly Lynn, and enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have an amazing weekend, and I hope to see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.